Everybody, and welcome to the Really Healed podcast. I'm your host, Richard the Mouse Williams, founder of Really Healed, where we bridge the gap between lived experience and professional insight in mental health, trauma recovery, and personal transformation. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Paddy Maher, founder of Mind Matters Hypnotherapy, Addiction, and Counselling Service. Paddy has spent many years working with people struggling with addiction, anxiety, and the patterns of thinking that keep people stuck. Through hypnotherapy, counselling, and what he calls mental education, he helps people better understand how their mind works and how real change can begin. He's also the author of a book and connected to his work in mental education, and runs programs designed to teach people practical tools to improve their mental well-being and breaking unhealthy patterns. Paddy, it's great to have you with us today, and welcome to the Really Healed podcast.
Thanks, Richie. Pleasure to be here, and thanks for inviting me on. Looking forward to a chat about mental health. So yeah, happy days.
Very good. Paddy, just to start off, can you give us a bit of your story and your background?
Yeah, well, I look at nearly as two sections, Rich. So obviously there's my childhood where I came from, and then obviously I'm in the area of social care and helping people for the last 25 years, a little bit more than 25 years, which is mad to be able to say that. And I know me and you've crossed paths a couple of times in our careers. But my childhood, I grew up in the Curragh camp. So in Kildare, County Kildare, it was an army base for people that don't know that. And it was vibrant. It was chaos. There was load. My father was a soldier. Mother was a housewife, but it had a massive influence on me because being around soldiers, and back then it was mainly men, so there was a lot of masculine, stuff around the area. There was a lot of sport, but then there was a lot of alcohol use as well. Which back in the day there was a huge amount of alcohol use around there, and that had an impact on not only me but everybody in the area. But yeah, growing up, like, the childhood was brilliant. We always describe it. Anyone from the Curragh would describe it as the biggest playground in Ireland. There was loads of things to do. You're running around, having great fun, not a care in the world, and it was good. But and I suppose what kind of, when I look back on where I come from and what I'm doing now, why I'm doing it, it has a huge, I suppose, connection to something happened years ago. I was about 8 years of age, and my mother, my father, and my youngest brother were in an accident, the old Newlands Cross, and there was a massive accident there, and my mother ended up getting severely damaged and injured, and there was brain damage there. But even how they treated her for the brain damage, they treated her in mental health hospitals and facilities, and so there was even back then, I felt, looking back now, there was a severe lack of understanding of what to do when somebody's struggling. But from my point of view, it was very significant for me. That 8-year-old boy didn't know what to do, and when I look back, I started acting out in school and behaving badly, and it's always interesting when you look at. I don't remember anybody asking me and telling me what was going on with my mother and my brother and my father, and there was no one actually helping me understand. And it's a pet hate of mine when I hear people saying children should be seen and not heard. It's not true. That's my first. When I'm thinking that, I'm very passionate about what I do, and kids need to be informed. They need to be educated, and I actually think, looking back, people were afraid to upset themselves. So adults were afraid to upset themselves, seeing me upset.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a good approach, Richie. It really wasn't. And when I look back, it wasn't. So then what you do, and we know what the way the mind works, we'll ignore that. We'll just plow on. We'll, keep going. That's what we all do. And But and then I do another significant thing that happened. I had an uncle who ended up taking his own life as well, and again didn't know anything about it. Nobody spoke about it. I was only 16 at the time, and yeah, it wasn't good. In the middle of all that, though, I'm going to school playing loads of sport. I was half decent at sport, so sport was a great release for me, and that's very significant in relation to my story as well. So I was playing sport, and I was, when I look back, it was nearly part of my identity, Rich. You know, like everything was around how good I was at playing hurling or football or volleyball or whatever I was playing, and and um, and I got injured then when I was around 17 or 18. I got a bad injury, twisted my pelvis playing sport, and that's when chaos happened, because all of a sudden then I don't have my identity in my own mind. I didn't have it, and it just completely changed my direction of life. And I'm glad it did in a weird way now, but at the time it was horrific. It was a massive traumatic event for me, and people all around me didn't know what to do either. So like there was a couple of years there where, yeah, would have lost control with drug and alcohol use and behaviours, and yeah, so got a bit lost, you
It's
know.
that's actually a great point, Paddy, and something that comes up a lot, I suppose. Certainly with people I've worked with, um, owning a particular identity or putting on a certain mask, and if anything disrupts that
Yeah,
or tries to take it away, they find themselves in a very difficult position.
yeah,
And having to reinvent themselves, or now
mm,
to have to look at themselves in a different way because that's gone.
yeah. It was huge, Rich, huge, and when you lose yourself, and I suppose as you get older, you start realizing that life is about you. It has to be. And that's what was really funny about my mental education program. The play on the words was the me program. It's all about me. Your life is all about you, really, and but again, we'll come back to that. But what happened then was, so there was a few years where I lost myself. You're trying to work. I was in buildings, not really happy. Anyone that I worked with, I'd have fun and I'd be messing or whatever it is, but I just wasn't settled. I was doing some jobs and work that I didn't really like, getting myself into bother, and struggling with. When I look back, I was struggling with depression. I wasn't able to deal with stuff that happened, and depression is all about things that happened to you in the past, and you'll dwell about the past too much, and it's a learned, like I'm a big believer that depression and anxiety in particular, they're learned behaviours.
Yes.
We learned them from our experiences, and I wasn't able to handle it, and that's very significant when I look back. It's a big reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now at the moment, because as the saying goes, prevention's better than cure. But what was really interesting then, I got a call from a cousin of mine who knew that I was interested in helping people on the ground, homeless people and people who were struggling. And it's funny how it worked, because it wouldn't actually happen now, because I would have left school early because I had to go and make money. We didn't have enough money to look after ourselves, really. So I had to leave school early to go and work. And to go into social care now, you'd struggle. You wouldn't get into social care the way I got in now. And I think
Mm.
it's the same with yourself, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
But because somewhere down the line, Richie, services went away from people who've got experience. It was all about your qualifications. Now, don't get me wrong, theory is very important, but practice. I've worked with people, I'm sure you have as well, who've had masters, and they can't build rapport with people,
Yeah.
which is the most important thing. You can have all the qualifications in the world, but if you can't build rapport with people, you're not going to help people.
Yeah.
It's just as simple as that. The number one thing that you need to help somebody is building rapport and trust with somebody. If you can't do that, doesn't matter what qualification you have, you're not going to be able to help people. But that the cousin, Clancy Night Shelter. Remember Clancy Barracks there
Yes.
beside
Yeah.
Houston Stations? That's where it started, right? So 25 year ago, just over 25 year ago, I walked in there. It was an old barracks. They gave us the middle floor of the old barracks. Like, it was probably unsafe, really. But we had up to 30, close to 30, between 25 and 30 people. But I remember at the time, Rich, and this is really significant, people were coming in, and when I was volunteering, so I was getting trains up and buses up and getting lifts up with my now wife. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now either. But people were coming in and dirt was cracking off their skin. Nobody would let them in for a shower. Nobody would work with them. Now, when I say this to people, they don't believe me. But people were coming in, like there was no real harm reduction back then.
No.
People were coming in with severe, like a lot of problems with Hep C and AIDS, and there was a massive amount of problems with unhealthy use and bloodborne viruses, and people were being treated like lepers. Now, genuinely, like lepers. And so that was going in there, and all the what I loved about it, and I loved it straight away, Richie. I remember even just rolling up newspapers, playing football with them in the canteen, and just having the crack. And because to me, I could see the person behind what was going on with them because of where I was from, and I could just it was something that I just took to straight away because I can almost feel the pain behind what was going on for somebody, and pain is there to let you know there's something wrong, and what we need to do is actually help each other to look at that pain, and if we can help people with that pain, happy days. But so I went in there as a volunteer, and obviously I was good at it. I was fairly good at it, and I was given a relief job without an interview. Again, wouldn't happen. Like I made an impact on people's lives. We were correct, and workers. I was working with people, really fantastic people back then as well, and so I was obviously decent at what I do or what I was doing with building rapport and having a crack. And then I had to study after the fact, so I went and did counselling work, youth studies, community work, motivation interviewing, all the harm reduction courses. So it was the other way around. I educated myself then from them. They supported me to do that, doing a lot of courses and intervention work and project work and courses. And, you've done a lot of those courses yourself as well. Just, care plans, all these things and helping people make changes and then work together. But even back then, Rich, it was so disjointed. Like there was nobody really talking to each other. There was a couple of meetings. You might have a collective meeting once a month or whatever it is, but there was no one really working with each other to help the individuals or the pathways for people.
Yeah, I think that to some degree, I know they tried to address that issue a couple of years ago. Whether they really got to where they wanted to be, I don't think so. But what I certainly found, Paddy, over the years was um, certain NGOs nearly working against each other because they were all looking for the same funding, or the funding was all coming
Yeah,
from the same pot. So everybody wanted to be able to do everything rather than there being that stepping stone, for the different phases, So whether it's very front line, um, maintenance, stabilization, rehabilitation, etc., etc. There was no. Everybody wanted to be doing a bit of everything rather than one group
yeah,
specializing in one thing. And like that, then very reluctant to share information with each other or to work with each other properly.
yeah,
Very,
yeah.
very difficult to find a solution to the problem when everybody's working on the problem rather than the solution.
No, but that's the problem.
Yeah,
That there isn't enough of an evaluation, an honest evaluation about what's actually happening and where the value for money is for services. And I know there'll be certain people who might be listening to this and would feel threatened by that, but we shouldn't. We find it's about evaluating what we're doing, and is it if it's not working, we have to change it. If it's working, happy days.
yeah,
But that's where when I'm asking people to do evaluations or journal or look at what the evaluating their own selves, the number one thing you need is honesty, and there's probably not enough honesty in relation to that, and looking at is it actually taken effect. But I won't dwell too much on that, because I stayed there for. We moved up to Blessington Street then, and we were there. I was there for about 4 years, and I got very disheartened. I won't lie to you. I got so disheartened because, again, even back then, there wasn't enough pathways. People were talking about, housing first models and stuff like that, which sounded great, but then I don't know if they've been implemented properly, and but obviously the numbers in homelessness are a record. They keep getting bigger, and the problems still keep getting bigger and bigger, and then there's nobody looking at the problems with the economy. That's where it all stems from. But anyway, we don't have time to go into that one. But I remember even somebody saying to me one day, "Well, Paddy, our job isn't to help these people, look after themselves. As a homeless service, it's to keep them off the street." I remember that being said to me, Rich, and it just you might as well have kicked me into the stomach. I just said, "I'm away, right? I'm not doing that then," because I really loved that. I would have been part at the start of the Homeless World Cup in Dublin city centre as well. We would have brought lads up to Dalymount Park. I'm a Bows fan which is great. The Bows are going well actually this year, but because of that, because I was up in Blessington Street, we used to go to matches and bring lads up to the games, and it was just brilliant. It was a brilliant time helping people. The service and the people in these services are fantastic. But you've worked with these people in the city centre, in St. Merchant's Quay, the Anna Liffey, all these places, and the Paul Trust, Focus Ireland, Simon, fantastic people. Everybody has a will to improve things.
Yeah.
And I just feel it's time for us all to come together and knit it all together, so we're all working together for the one goal, because isolated we're weak, together we're stronger. But I left there and I went to the Bond project in Blanchardstown, and I stayed there for a while and doing nights, and there was a day service as well, but I couldn't cope with the nights, if I'm being honest with you. After having a small child, but I was there for a while. I really enjoyed it. Good service, brilliant work. And then I went to a day service for young offenders for 4.5 years, and loved it. Worked with a great man there who taught me so much. But it's funny when you look back on it. I was banging heads with him and he was banging heads with me. But when I reflect on that, it was really interesting. Great learning, because I was an active learner and he was a reflective learner. And it wasn't until years later that I realised. Now, if you did a measurement on my learning style now, Rich, I'd be more balanced between reflective and active. I'd no problem. I'd jump in straight away and do work, and then I'd make mistakes and I learn from it after. Whereas he would plan, do, evaluate, plan, do, evaluate. It was great learning. He was a great man and met some great people there. But went from there then to work with the addiction services for 12 years, and that's where I met you. So I was in the addiction services for 12 years. Loved it. That's love group work. Love helping people empower themselves to make changes. Like the model of Di Clemente. Di Clemente is a model that I use a lot with addiction. I think it's the best model. The trans-theoretical model is just fantastic, because it just gives clear evidence-based pathways to recovery. And I love that model that in relation to addiction and helping people understand their addiction and how to recover, how it's developed obviously, and how you recover. And in the middle of that, then I was volunteering with Hope D, which was a depression-based and suicide-based charity in Newbridge. It's since actually closed its doors, which I think is madness. It's just, this is one of the biggest problems, that services aren't getting the funding and the respect and then people aren't getting the services that they need. It was a great service, and I know the addiction service actually has gone away from the town, away from people as well. It's just, I believe it's madness what's happening, but we'll come back to that in a few minutes. But so when I was facilitating a group for people who were affected by suicide. So I was doing that group for nearly 2 years, and I was doing acupuncture groups and meditation groups with them, and I loved it, and they loved it as well. And And then I got the opportunity of studying hypnotherapy. Like I wasn't really interested in anything. I didn't really, if I'm being honest, I wasn't drawn towards psychotherapy and psychology. I just, for whatever reason, I wasn't. And when I seen hypnotherapy, I went and tried it, and like I would have stopped cigarettes years ago with hypnotherapy. Didn't know what it was. Went into this man, and he told me to sit on the chair. I thought I was going to be asleep. Hadn't a clue about it, and I haven't smoked since. But it was just an amazing experience, and it changed my life. But I was curious, so I went and studied hypnosis and hypnotherapy and got qualification. Absolutely amazing. The trainer, Louis Ryan, trained me. He was absolutely incredible. And he helped me realize that everything is through the mind, Richie. And I know I'm preaching to the converted here with you, but like everything goes through your mind. Your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviors, anxiety, fears, phobias, addictions, everything. So, and it was just a mind blowing experience. And I love it. And it actually fitted with what I want. The theory that I had and understanding I had, plus my passion to help people. It was just the ideal thing. And so I set up my own private practice in 2012. That was only part-time. And but fast forward then with the addiction services, and again I got disheartened. The models we were using, we weren't accountable. I'm big on accountability, Richard. I think that one of the biggest problems with services is that we're not accountable for what we're doing. And I was just getting so disheartened about what we were doing. Everyone's quoting evidence-based practice, but there's nobody actually analysing their own evidence and changing and adapting. Because, like I said to you, that man I worked with the young offending program, he helped me really understand that if something's not working, you have to change it. If it's not working, you change it. That's how you develop. That's how a community project will develop. That's how you actually help people achieve their goals. Because if you have to practice what you're preaching. If you're sitting with a client and what they're doing is not working, and you're not changing yourself, how do you expect somebody else to change? So it got so disheartened. And then a homeless service took over the addiction services in Kildare, and I couldn't get my head around that. With all due respect to them, they came to the place. I didn't feel like they had the expertise to do what they were doing, and I didn't agree with the models that they were looking to introduce. It was all harm reduction, and Richie, harm reduction has its limits.
Of course,
harm reduction is only for people who are in pre-contemplation and contemplation. Harm reduction will only work with those people, and then when somebody wants to change, they need more than that. When they go into the preparation stage of change, the action stage of change, and the maintenance change, harm reduction can't help somebody. But that's just my own opinion, my own professional opinion on that. Harm reduction will only help people who don't want to change or who are not unsure about changing. So that's So I'm actually sitting in a cabin now, in my back garden. I set up my own private practice, Richie. And I'm sorry for going on a bit here now,
you're
but
good.
I set up my own private practice, and so with Mind Matters hypnotherapy, addiction and counselling service. So I set that up, and I'm here and going really well. I love it. And then in the middle of that, then I've met a good friend of mine. Fracas Foran is a friend of mine that I met one day, and we start talking, and we start looking at the problems, and we set up a thing on Facebook called Reduce and Stop Suicide Ireland. And this is significant for the mental education program, because talking to Fracas, I realised, and he helped me realise, that people don't understand. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. They don't understand their emotions, their feelings, parents, kids, teenagers. And that's my experience. I'm sure it's your experience in your private practice as well, Richie. People don't understand, right? So I was out one day and I said, right, because I was doing group programs in schools. I was invited into schools to talk, and it was really amazing going into my own school, and there was teachers that taught me, and it was incredible, how things turn around. So, and when I was out walking the dog one day, and I just said to myself, what am I doing here? What? I was just questioning, yourself, just thinking about things and mulling things over in my head, And I says, I'm educating people, and then I was thinking, well, we've got physical education in school. Why don't we have mental education? I think it's more important than anything. So my mission in life now is to, you know, get the education system to introduce a new class called mental education, that we're educating kids properly. We've, you know, and I've that's where I come up with the idea of the book and giving people basic evidence-based information about addiction, stress management, all that stuff, and self-esteem and assertiveness, which I think are massive. If you've got good self-esteem and you're assertive, you're not going to have too many problems in life, I don't think. You know, so that's fairly long-winded, Richie. I'm sorry about
Okay,
that,
it's
but
okay.
there's a lot going on for me. Yeah,
So I had a few questions laid out for you, I suppose, and you've answered a good few of them there, you know.
yeah,
Um, and something I find quite a lot with people that come to me, you know, I have a problem, but I don't know what the problem is. I've something wrong, but I don't know what it is. And even if they come with what they perceive to be the problem, it usually turns out not to be the actual problem. It seems
yeah,
to be the solution to the problem until that solution no longer works, if that makes sense.
yeah,
So, you know, I have a problem with addiction. I can't stop taking that drug. But why are you
mm,
taking the drug in the first place? So, what is it that you're
yeah,
escaping from? You know, so the problem is never the problem. And, you know, I was a bit late to the table in being introduced to hypnotherapy. To be honest with you, I would have thought it was a bit airy fairy. It wasn't for me. Certainly in addiction services, a number of years ago, there was a big highlight on holistics, which has kind of fizzled out again now. But you know, they were introducing Reiki, acupuncture, massage, different things like that. And I thought that was a bit airy fairy at the time when it was being introduced, and would have kind
mm,
of put hypnotherapy into the same category as all of them.
yeah,
And to my own ignorance, I suppose, dismissed it. And then later on, or more recently, had another look at it and found it very, very interesting, and actually saw the impact and the powerful results that it can have. And
mm,
in some cases, or in a lot of cases, very, very quickly as well, in terms of the change that it can bring about. Um,
yeah,
so I just wanted to ask you about a couple of different things. Why willpower alone is often isn't enough to create change. What actually happens in the mind when people get stuck in negative habits or addictions, um, and why people repeat patterns that they know aren't good for them.
mm.
And so, if you can just talk to me a little bit about any of them.
I love that. I love that because, like, when you were talking about hypnotherapy, all I wanted to do was jump in there and tell you how brilliant it is, right? And I'd be biased, but there is evidence. You know, when we talk about evidence, there's evidence there that hypnotherapy beats most therapies, Rich. And that's not me. And I know somebody might be listening to this thinking, oh, that you can't be saying that. I would have no problem going into, if somebody said to me, let's have an experiment, you know, compare what you do with somebody to what psychotherapy does or what. Now, I'm not dismissing any therapy, because every therapy has its own place, right? But the reason I got into hypnotherapy was I thought, well, if a man, this lovely man in a room in Nace at the time, could get me to stop smoking in one session, surely, because I was doing the addiction services at the
Mm.
time, surely it can help people with heroin and cocaine problems and weed and benzos and alcohol and it does, Rich,
Mm.
as you know, it does. It's the best form of treatment out there. It really is. And I'm sorry if anybody's offended with saying that. I know it is, because I've been around all the therapies for the last 25 years. And it absolutely wipes the floor with everything. The problem with what I do is people have to pay me, you know. But eventually, I will look to train addiction workers and homeless workers and project workers, right? But But again, you can't do everything. But the reason in my private practice, one of my favorite things to do is regression therapy, Richie, right? And the reason that I think regression therapy works so well, so you help somebody work back, like you said. So why does somebody have a problem with alcohol? Alcohol is a symptom of the problem.
Yeah.
Drug use is a symptom of a problem, and so they're called sensitizing events. So when you get angry or you're struggling with your emotions or your behaviors, they're reinforcing the behaviors where a person thinks there's something wrong with them when there's not. They're just getting things wrong. The mind is like a computer.
Yeah.
It's programmed. You go back to using psychology and conditioning. We've been programmed. So you have to help somebody work back. Well, where did you learn that? What's going on, right? And that's subconscious. That's the subconscious part of the mind is the computer part of the mind, the long-term memory. If we didn't have the subconscious, we wouldn't be able to walk. We wouldn't be able to talk. We wouldn't be able to drive a car. We wouldn't be able to do all these things that we do. I wouldn't be able to talk freely like this with you if I didn't have a subconscious mind.
All the
I'm
automatics.
tapping it.
Yeah.
Yes, the automatic behaviors. Like my hands are moving there because I'm obviously excited. I love talking about this subject, right? Now, the willpower, that's the conscious part of the mind. So that's the here and now. A lot of people are working on mindfulness now. That's why mindfulness works really well, because mindfulness will help you channel yourself into this moment right now. It's and then the subconscious then can learn to relax. So mindfulness can be very effective to help people with coping skills with depression and anxiety. But so willpower alone is a conscious part of the mind, and that's why it doesn't work. The old saying, it takes 21 days to change a habit. So that's the theory behind that. So that's the old saying that people had an idea of it, but they didn't really understand why.
Yeah.
Why does it take that long, right? So, repetition. So you can drill it in. You can change that way, but it's really hard. It's so much more effective if you allow the subconscious, the emotional part of your brain, take over and look at, well, why? You look at, there's a lot of videos there for business and stuff like that. Your why. If you don't explore your why should I do it? Why should I come onto this podcast with you? Why? Do you know, I love talking about mental health. I have great respect for you and what you're doing, and we're all looking to educate ourselves and improve what we're doing, right? So hypnotherapy, it works with the subconscious part of your mind, and it scares a lot of people, Rich. It's so powerful. It's not even funny.
It's the
Yeah,
fear of the unknown. You know,
yes,
it's
yeah,
funny. I find that comes up quite a lot in working with people, certainly with addiction. I want to get clean. I want to get sober. I want to turn my life around, but I don't know what that's going to feel like or what it's going to look like. It's
yeah,
unfamiliar to me. It's unknown to me. So therefore, I won't admit to it, but it's actually a little bit scary.
yeah,
Maybe I'm just better off staying in the chaos that I'm in because I'm comfortable
yeah,
and familiar with it.
yeah.
Um,
It's powerful, isn't it?
yeah,
Because I always use that to people when people say that, and when I say it to them, but my mind isn't powerful. Somebody will say, "Sure, my mind isn't powerful." Somebody will come in on the floor with addiction or problems with gambling or, you know, drugs, alcohol, sex, whatever, right? And I'm on the floor. My brain isn't, or self-esteem problems, which is huge, And what do you mean my brain is powerful? Well, your brain is making you do things that you don't want to do. It's convinced you that alcohol or drugs or gambling or sex or violence is in some way helping you live your life. And it's causing you to create problems with your life and your well being. That's how powerful your mind is. So the only person that can change that is you. But a lot of people don't know how their mind works, Rich.
yeah,
I was with a group there last night and showing people how their mind works about the conscious and the subconscious, how they work together. But when you're in hypnosis, the conscious part of the mind gets out of the way, and you're working freely with the subconscious and helping somebody motivate themselves. Because if you're not motivated to change, you're not going to change.
of course.
That's why I was kind of saying to you about harm reduction. Harm reduction workers need to know motivation interviewing. If you don't know
Mm.
motivation interviewing, you have no business working with people on the ground.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Mm.
You can give them certain care, you can put a blanket on them, you can put your arm around them and help them and support them. But if you don't know when somebody's ready to change,
Yeah.
if you're not able to actually help somebody to change,
Mm.
well, you might need to go and learn how to do that or step out of the way for
Yeah.
somebody that does. And but yeah,
There's
does that answer the
there's a
question?
piece
Yeah,
that stood out for me there, Paddy, just since we've been starting to have this chat, and definitely there's some level of learning that we need to do, i.e., go and get the pieces of paper that give us the qualification to be able to say, I'm
yeah,
qualified to do this job. But there's all the other little mini tools that we pick up along the way that aren't necessarily, you don't have to go and do a master's or a degree in them. And you mentioned a
mm,
couple of them there, the likes of motivational interviewing, or the little bits that you pick up as part of training as we go through the
yeah,
jobs that we worked in, whether it was looking at CRA or all the different add-ons to it, all the different pieces of holistics that were introduced over the years and stuff like that, and being able to tap into each one of those individually where they were needed along the way for each individual person, because what will work for one person doesn't always necessarily work for the next. So, but being very well rounded, and it's funny, you triggered that thought for me there because in 2018 I was back in doing another degree in UCD, and they brought a guy in to do motivational interviewing, which I had done years previous. And first of all, it was a great refresher for me because there's always bits you forget, along the way, or if you use it or lose it, isn't that what they say? So for that
yeah,
purpose,
yeah,
it
yeah,
was brilliant. Um, but it made me realize actually I'm sitting here in a room full of there was basically four managers from most of the well known organisations in Dublin, homeless services, picked to go and do this degree. And I thought it's the staff on the floor that should be learning this stuff, not me. I'm sitting in an
mm,
office managing a
mm,
place. This skill is
mm,
needed for the people on the floor. Um,
yeah,
and
mm,
it made me realize that there's a lot of those pieces that are missed by people. They go in and they get a degree in social care or whatever it is. They have the piece of paper and the qualification. They thrown onto the floor in the mix of things, and they're missing so many of the little smaller skill sets, the tools, the necessary tools in the toolbox.
yeah. Well, Richie, I remember being in a drop-in and a, a service user came up to me, and I go one step further and say, well, why don't people on the ground understand these things? Like motivation interviewing to me is a way of life, and how you speak to somebody and how you encourage people, and how you listen to your listening skills, and it's so important to listen to what's not been said as well as what is being said, but I believe that, and this is why I'm so passionate about mental education. I want to give people on the ground. I believe from the age of 8, 9, 10 that we should start talking. I know there is a lot been done in schools talking about emotions and feelings,
Hmm.
and then teenage years especially, like that transition from primary school to secondary school can be horrific for people because they're at a really difficult age. I actually am one of these people who think secondary school shouldn't start until you're 14 because at that stage your mind is completely different. But anyway, that's another story. But you're right. Things like CBT, little things about how your mind works, how your thinking will affect how you feel, and how you feel will affect your behavior. And like, why is it just managers or workers? I would believe that everybody in the ground needs to understand this, and in a basic way, in a simplified way, because that girl in the drop-in said, "Well, what books do you read?" She asked me, "What books do I read and what did I study?" And I rattled off a few things to her, and she says, "Well, why don't we have access to those things?"
Yeah.
And it just got me thinking that you're 100% right,
Well,
and then
education is always key. Um,
yeah,
if you don't know something, you can't be expected to be able
yeah,
to do
big
it.
time,
Um,
yeah. But also, Richie, sorry to cut across you there. there's a big difference between education and knowledge, as you know. And this is the thing that I want to help people understand. Like, I mightn't have loads of masters, but I'm constantly learning. If you're not curious about things and want to learn new things, because you're right, if somebody comes into, say, my private practice, I need to be able to adapt to them. They don't need to have to adapt to me. If I only have one, really good modality, that person has to come in and do what I tell them to do. Whereas a therapist needs to be able to, a really good therapist needs to be able to, first of all, know their limits. Like, I mean, I'm not a medical practitioner, but I'm able to adapt to somebody's needs. So I'm able to help somebody with sports. I'm able to help somebody with performance in business. I'm able to help people who've got, depression or anxiety or fears or phobias, or, that you're able to adapt to people, and that's my belief anyway.
That's the, I suppose, the true piece of being person centered,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
not being reliant. And you said something there, Paddy, that I really liked as well. Um, we don't have to know it all, and to be able to have the confidence yourself to be able to say to a client, "I'm not the right
yeah,
person for you, but I can point you in the right
yeah,
direction. But actually,
yeah.
this isn't my remit. Lovely to meet you.
Mm,
I'll point you in the right direction of somebody that will look after you properly."
yeah,
We don't have to be the experts in everything, but in what we
no,
do know, being able to be person centered and being able to know when and where to apply that to the right person, I
yeah,
suppose. Before we jump into the next piece, I'm going to again throw a couple of different questions at you, and we'll see where it takes us. So I just want to
yeah,
look at mental health in Ireland, I suppose, and the current mental health landscape for the whole of Ireland and kind of what that looks like. So, why do you think it is that so many people are struggling with anxiety and stress today? What is the importance of prevention and education? I know you've touched on that a little bit already, and mental well-being, and what people should start to do today to improve their mental health.
yeah. It's a big question.
Huge.
But it's a question like it's a question that doesn't scare me. It's a plan that doesn't scare me. I do think we're not doing enough because of fear. Everyone's afraid to do things and we have to be cautious. Don't get me wrong, but I actually believe that the whole system in Ireland needs to be evaluated. And we had this conference there in Newbridge there last week or the other day, exploring the problems and looking at what's there. And what we found is people are very, very angry, Rich. They're very angry because they're upset that listen, we can't solve every single problem, but there's basics that need to change in my view. The pathway of somebody who's got mental health issues need to change. And I say it all the time, and I'm open to be challenged on this, Richard, right? But I believe that if you don't have a medical issue, if you don't have a pathological problem, medication is not the first solution to that problem.
Yeah.
The problem we have in Ireland is that when somebody has a problem at home and when the child is feeling anxious or depressed or angry or there's drug problems or whatever it is, we go straight to our GP, and I don't think that's the pathway for it. And I think that's why our GPs are getting overwhelmed, and then they're trained to intervene medically and pathologically, that's their training, that's their expertise.
Yeah.
But if I'm going into a doctor and I don't have a medical problem, think about it. And when you say it out loud, if you don't have a medical problem, why are we getting treated medically?
Yeah.
So, and then what happens then is if you've got severe issues or problems and somebody develops psychosis or drug problems or suicidal thoughts, they end up going to A&E, right?
Yeah.
And this is something that I'm really, really passionate about. And we have to do things right. It's not about shouting and roaring and,
Yeah.
kicking down doors and stuff like that. We need to help people understand it, because what I've noticed is politicians don't understand this. And they're going and they're taking guidance from medical practitioners
Yeah.
who I don't think understand this either, right? So, and then what happens is our A&Es, our nurses are getting overwhelmed in A&Es. So when people have got physical, life-threatening emergencies in A&E, and then you have a guy in the corner who thinks that somebody's chasing them, and they're having psychotic thoughts, and they're struggling. And those nurses don't have not that they don't have the expertise, they don't have the time.
Yeah.
So our A&Es are getting overrun with drug and alcohol problems and addiction. I actually believe that there needs to be a separate pathway for a separate service, whether it's a community hub that people can prevent things from happening. The stigma around it needs to change. It's a cultural problem in Ireland, in my view. So that pathway, when I say, what's the pathway?
Something like a mental health A&E, Paddy,
Yes,
specifically
yes,
for mental health issues.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's linked to, the word, and and that we give people the care and the respect and the kindness that deserve. And I know how airy fairy that sounds, Jesse, right? But I don't care. I believe in the basics of respect, kindness, and care. If you can wrap things around people like that, the reason that our young people are so angry and causing problems on the street is because they're not getting the respect. They don't feel like they're getting the respect. And then our cultural problems, like, like I said, I grew up in the Curragh. We were regularly called scumbags, Rich. Like, how do you think you're going to help me by calling me a scumbag? Right? And it's happening all over the place. And if other people don't respect us, what we need to do is respect ourselves in the middle of estates and towns. And other people can call us whatever they fucking want, but we need to be able to actually empower ourselves and say, right, we can change. Respect is earned.
Yeah.
Let's make changes from the inside out, right? But going back to the educational piece, this is why I think, like, real preventative work, Richie, is getting to somebody before they have a problem. There's so many people talking about suicide prevention, but when you analyze it, Richie, it's not suicide prevention. If I'm suicidal,
Yeah.
that you're not
The
preventing me from
prevention
killing
piece is
myself.
too late. Yeah.
It's suicide intervention.
Yes. Yes.
So real preventative work goes on the ground.
Yeah.
You're looking at kind of setting up clubs and places that people can go where they feel safe.
Yeah.
I'm talking to groups all the time. I was with a team last night, and we're talking about the basics of our mind, and we don't understand our mind. Why do we not understand our mind and how it works, Richie? Every single one of us has a mind, has a brain, and it's time that we educate ourselves properly. And that's what I suppose. I'm very passionate about this. I'm sure you can get that. I'm not,
So
but
there was an
yeah,
interesting article in the Irish Times last Sunday by a professor from Maynooth, and again, huge research piece. But she was talking about the increase from children, teens, and young adults up to the age of 25, and less than half of people that were part of the surveys reported their mental health as good to very good. And just under a quarter said it was bad or very bad. And I suppose those statistics have nearly doubled in the last 10 years. And I went on to kind of say later on in the article about how adults, there was a huge proportion of adults that if they were asked and put through the survey, I suppose, they would be classed as having a mental health disorder.
yeah.
And the huge turnaround in that, and I suppose, do you think how we live our lives today has an impact on that? And I'll tell you what I mean by that. So, you know, up until 150 years ago, we'd no running water in our houses, we'd no electricity, we'd certainly no technology. It wasn't, I'll go and have a shower now, and you jump in and it's a nice warm thing. If you wanted a fire, you went out and chopped the wood yourself. And we have everything that's instant now. Everything is immediate. Everything is at the click of a button. We have everything to hand. And in some way, you would imagine that would have a massive boost on your mental health, that it would make things so much better and easier.
No.
And yet we see a huge problem now. Like, You know, myself and yourself got into this game over 20 years ago. And now I'm seeing new addictions emerge, you know, doom scrolling, gaming addiction, you know,
Yeah.
technology pieces that people are using as an escape because they don't want to have to deal with what it is that's going on for them mentally. And what's your take on that, and where do you see that even going in the next number of years?
It's again, all these topics and subjects are massive. Like, and again, it goes back to that lack of understanding. I see parents all the time bringing young teenagers to me, you know, and obviously with ACRA, you know, the
Mm.
Adolescent Community Reinforcement Approach, and CRA, and all these things that you're using these exercises with young people to help them understand. But parents don't understand it. So I know I might sound like I'm a broken record, but the lack of education and understanding is huge. And if you don't know how to build a self assured young person, and this is what it comes down to, Richie, because you hear all the older people saying, "Oh, back in my day, there was no mental health problems." Yes, there was.
Mm.
There was 100%. Now, were you tougher?
Yeah.
100%. Like when you're spoiled, and that's what it comes down to. And I don't like the word spoiled, but it's the same with the snowflake scenario. You know,
Mm.
you hear our generation calling younger generation snowflakes. I hate it, by the way. I don't like it, right? Because our generation is causing this problem, right? That I heard a great quote not so long ago where the biggest problem we have now at the moment with young people is their parents are doing too much for them, right? So the parents are doing loads for young teenagers and kids learn to manipulate us,
Mm.
and then we don't want to see our kids suffering, right? So, and parents, by doing things for your kids or for our kids, we build our self-esteem.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is you're robbing their self-esteem. So they're not resilient. I honestly believe with young people with anxiety and depression especially is they're not resilient. And I came across a thing years ago called the 40 developmental assets. So Search Research in America did this piece. It's great. You can find it online. So simple. And they talk about internal and external resources that we need to have for if we want to be self-assured
Mm.
people, strong, independent, and self-assured. And but yet we're not teaching ourselves how to do this.
Yeah.
So that suffering is a part of life.
Yes.
You know, grief and loss, and that's what the mental education program's doing as well, helping people to understand sadness and anger and all these difficulties, and that you have to work hard if you want to achieve something.
Mm.
And young people, they're not getting that message. And then when they have a bad experience in school, and bullying is a big thing as well, Rich, you know, and bullies need to realize that they're the problem. It's not the victim. The victims are getting help and support, but we need to we need to face bullying we need to look at bullying in a different way as well, and hold bullies accountable for what they're doing, because there's something wrong with the bully. If I have to hurt you to make myself feel better, Richie, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah, of course.
If you have to hurt somebody to make yourself feel better, there's something wrong with you.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? And I know that when I go back to my own childhood, when I was struggling, you know, you'd be tripping young lads up. You think it's funny, but you're acting out because you're emotional, and you don't. Somebody needs to pull those bullies aside and say, "Why are you doing that?"
Yeah.
So accountability is huge. Education, it'll always go back to education, Richie. You know, and because if we have educated adults and young people, and then we're educating our young people who will educate the older people, and all of a sudden then if we build self-assured, assertive, confident people, we're going to have very little problems, Richie, and
Mm.
I really believe that, you know. So yeah.
Excuse me. Do you believe, you know, what I see, I suppose for myself personally, um, COVID has taught me a lot of different things. So people got locked up in their homes, they got locked away. We got used to being stuck behind the screen a lot more. You know, um, professionally for me, it taught me that I can work with anybody anywhere in the world. So I can jump on a Zoom call now and do business and work and whatever. Um, any time of the day with anybody, any part of the world. You know, previously, I suppose you were almost expected to jump on a plane if you wanted to do business or whatever or work with different parts of the world. And so I suppose in that it has its benefits. But the other side of it is less inclined to get out and mix and meet people, you know, and that social aspect. And I see, I suppose, with the younger generations growing up, they're quite comfortable in sitting behind the screen and interactively playing with their pals 5 or 10 miles away through a headset. But they're not actually getting that face to face interaction, and I suppose the influence that that can have on their mental health, you know, what does that look like? What do you feel about that?
Yeah, but also you could argue, Richie, that we're not providing spaces for young people either. If you don't play sport,
Yeah.
what do you do? You know, and that's why I was kind of thinking of a community hub where, and we have to segregate people who are having problems. Of course we do, right? But where's the inclusivity and the place that people can go and learn? And I'd love, like, it might be a dream, but I'd love to see a community hub in every town in Ireland. A community hub that people can go that doesn't involve alcohol, that doesn't involve anything else, only just being there, and it's shaped by the people. So it's shaped by people there, so that you have, say, support groups, you have maybe talks, you can just go and have a cup of tea, a game of pool, a game of darts, and you know it's inclusive. You know that nobody is pushed out
Mm.
and pushed away. That people are supported, and then if there's a service that somebody goes to, they can go to there and again, it's having people who understand what they're doing as well and who care. But going back to the, like, what do you do? Like, you'd know that there's five main areas in our life. So life is all about balance. Life is all about living, right? So, and your life is going to be unbalanced at times depending on what's going on, right? But the five, I always kind of talk to people about the five main areas of life, right? So you have your practical needs. So practically, are you getting up? Are you going on time? Are you washing? You know, your health, your well-being. Are you looking after certain things? Your responsibilities, your work, practically, right? And reflecting on that. Your physical, your mental, your emotional, and spiritual,
Mm.
whatever that is to you.
Mm.
You know, um, like I'd be a very spiritual guy. I'm not very religious. You know, like spirituality to me is very important, and I won't go into it with you here today if you don't want me to,
Mm.
but it's a big subject that you could actually spend a whole podcast talking
Yeah.
about. Um, but like I said to you, I keep it simple. Spiritually, I keep it simple. Pain. I want to reduce the amount of pain that I have in my life or people who are around me. And if you look around at the pain, spiritually, if you look at, like, pain will tell you that somebody is not happy.
Mm.
Pain will let you know that there's something wrong with somebody, either physically, mentally, or emotionally. And then if you look at the physical, the mental, and the emotional, are you satisfying those needs then? So young people, like, you know, technology is not going to go anywhere, Rich. You know,
Of course not.
we have to embrace that and say, right, okay, that's fine. But if we provide them with a space where they can go and they feel comfortable and they feel safe, safety is huge.
Mm.
So for young people, it's feeling safe, because, like, you think about back in our day, Rich, like me and you were old lads.
Mm.
Like, I'm an old lad to young people.
Yeah.
I love having a joke with young people when I'm working with them. I'm sure I'm an old lad, you know.
Yeah.
And like, let them, like, we're human.
Mm.
We were there. I always say to young people, I say, you know, the teenagers can be gobshites sometimes, Rich.
Yes.
And they look at you and kind of go, "Jeez, you can't say that."
Yeah.
I said, "I can." You know, and do you know how I know teenagers are gobshites and can be gobshites?
Yeah.
It's
We
because
used
I
to
was a
be one.
gobshite. Yeah, I didn't understand,
Yeah.
and I'd be going around pretending that I knew stuff, or I'd be pleasing. I'd end up kind of smoking with people just to fit in with people, because there's safety in a group. As a teenager, you know, helping teenagers understand that that's very natural to be afraid. You know, I don't want to admit that I'm afraid to you. I've no problem telling anybody that I'm afraid
Mm.
at times, and I've no problem telling somebody that I love myself as well.
Yeah.
You know, I've worked hard on loving myself. I don't care what. But back in our day, if you said you loved, you know, or how the context that we would use back then was, oh, he loves himself.
Yes.
But the people that we used to say loved themselves, didn't. We know that now.
Yeah.
They'd low self-esteem,
Yes.
so balance in your life is really important, Richie.
Mm.
And people need to look at. And I know people say, "Oh, I went to a doctor and he told me to go for a walk," but it's not only the walk; it's finding physical exercise that gets the dopamine levels
Mm.
firing in your brain.
Mm.
Because dopamine, we need dopamine, as you know, Richie, to feel good.
Yeah.
That's what chemical dopamine in our brain is for.
Mm.
And when people are using drugs in an unhealthy way and misusing drugs, you're wearing away the dopamine level. So that's why people, when they're using drugs, get very depressed, and they've no interest they lose interest in things they used to have, because they're wearing away all the dopamine levels in their brain.
Yes.
And now, thankfully, when somebody goes into recovery and detoxes and starts putting the work in a positive way, they replenish. The dopamine levels replenish themselves, and yeah, it is fascinating, but it's hard work. It's hard work to get balance in your life, isn't it? Really, So
100%.
I don't have an airy fairy answer to that, Rich. I don't
Oh,
have
that's
I
okay.
don't.
I was having a conversation with a lady the other day, and I suppose a similar background to ourselves in terms of her working profession and stuff like that, you know. And she
Yeah,
said to me, "I don't get a minute to myself." We were talking about self care and the importance of looking after yourself, you know, and
yeah,
that piece of how do you give from an empty cup? You can't, you know.
yeah.
So self care being a huge part of it. And she said, "I don't, because I don't have the time." And I said, "Well, what does your day look like? Tell me about your day, you know." And she said, "Well, you know, I go into work, or I'd get up in the morning, get the kids ready, then I go out and I go to work and I get into work, and I might get a 5 minute break, grab a quick cup of tea, and then you're back at it, you know." And I said, "What would you do for the 5 minutes with your cup of tea?" "Well, I walk outside and I stand out the back just to get out of the hustle and bustle and the noise, and I'll stand in the lane at the side of the building." And I said to her, and I said, "Would you do any breath work or anything like that while you're there?" "No." And I said, "But do you stand there for the 5 minutes and hold your breath then?" And she said, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "Well, do you breathe while you're there?" She said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, isn't that breath work?" "Yeah." I
Mm.
said, "So the difference between you saying you don't do it and you doing it is bringing your attention to it. So could you
Mm.
stand there and just take 3 long, slow, deep breaths while you're standing out in the lane?" "Yeah, I suppose I could." I said, "And could you bring your attention to the wind on your face? Or could you open your ears up to hear maybe a bird in the distance or the sound of the wind? Or
Yeah.
could you feel the breeze on your face or the rain if it was falling?" I said,
Mm.
"So would that be any different from me telling you in an airy fairy way to go and do some breath work for 2 minutes and ground
And
yourself?"
mindfulness.
You know,
Yeah,
mindfulness. Yeah, exactly, Paddy, right?
that's
And
just be there in the moment. Yeah,
you could see the penny drop for the lady, and she was like, "Oh Jesus, I never really looked at it like that." I said, "How do you get to work?" She said, "I actually walk. I'm only about 15 minutes away." So I said, "So you're getting exercise in 15 minutes there and 15 minutes back." And I
yeah.
said, "Again, could you bring your awareness to that 15 minutes of just spending that time for yourself while you're getting there and getting home, rather than, oh jeez, I have to go home and wash the dog and put the dinner on and make sure the washing is hung out." And you know, I said, "There's your half an hour a day of spending time with yourself, those 2 minute breaks, and without making it all airy fairy, very practical.
Yeah.
Focus on the breath, focus on the nature, focus on the fresh air, etc., etc. All those little mini mindfulness pieces." And it was fascinating to watch our countenance change over the 10 minute conversation about how our perception of, "Oh, I don't have time to look after myself," to actually, "I'm doing it already, I just haven't pointed my notice to it."
But but Richie, what we brought, I don't know. Like, I think we were brought up to believe all that is stupid.
Yes, we were, yeah. Well, it's
Like
airy
we
fairy,
were,
that's
weren't
what I
we?
would have called it, you know.
Yeah, because like you said earlier on, the fear of the unknown is like, oh Jesus. I remember when I started doing hypnotherapy for the first time, the ridicule I got from people was unbelievable.
Mm.
And but even things like yoga and like you said, mindfulness and I even still now to this day have people coming up and making the joke of, oh, don't look into my eyes and all this, and people have just a
Swinging the watch.
serious lack of understanding. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. But when you think about like meditation, and I remember years ago myself thinking that it was a little bit silly and stuff like that. Until like I was with the Irish volleyball team for a while, and I remember we were doing some meditation. Our coach got to do it. I fell asleep. It was brilliant. It was just so relaxing. It was unbelievable. And but you see, all these things like meditation, yoga, Reiki, all these are helping your mind.
Yes.
And but I honestly believe, and I believe that fear is stopping people from accessing these things. Like all these things down through the years were called alternative therapies, right? So, but alternative to what? And when you
Yeah.
really think about it, like who came up with that term alternative therapies, or you need to be scared, or me and you would technically probably be called quacks by certain
Yes.
doctors.
Yeah.
And with all due respect to the medical profession, and like I said to you earlier on, if we can't treat emotional and mental problems really medically, but we keep doing it over and over and over and over again. These things like meditation, hypnotherapy, like hypnotherapy itself is just working your own mind. You'd know that now, Richie.
Yeah.
You know that meditation is quietening down your mind and focusing on relaxing
Yeah.
yourself.
The
Mindfulness is just
there's
being
a
present.
funny piece there, Paddy. The
I
definite.
lost you there for a
You
second.
did, yeah. I have you now. You're actually looking
So
much better now. Whatever reconnected there, we give you a filter or something. But you have to
yeah.
lose in 5 years. But
No, but my point just simply though, Richie, is that these things are there to help us with our mind, and even just I seen some research. I think it was over in Scandinavian countries where they do a 5 minute or 10 minute meditation at the start of classes in primary school, just to help people ground themselves. And like you said, breathe. Kids are coming in and they're stressed out. You don't know what they're after having in their home.
yeah,
And then the teachers will just say, right, right, guys. And it's normal to actually look after your brain.
yeah,
Imagine that. Our brain, we can't study. Like when we're studying, we're trying to retain information. That's our brain.
yeah,
And if you're not looking after your brain, you're going to be in serious trouble. And then there's loads of lads then they're running around all over the place, like you think of ADHD and stuff like that, and OCD and all these things that are happening with people, all stress related. And we're not teaching our kids how to relax and slow down. We need to make it natural that you look after your brain. And like again, like I say, I keep stressing it, Richard. We've got PE. We need to look at ME. Show people how to relax their brain. They don't know how to do it.
yeah. So we're just coming up to the hour there, Paddy.
Yeah.
But before we wrap it up, I suppose if you had something that you'd like to close with, and yeah, if you could tell us a little bit about where we can find you, the services you offer, where we can find you on social media, access to your book, and a few different things like that.
Yeah, perfect, Rich. Yeah, no. So like obviously I got my private practice in the Curragh, Brownstown, the Curragh, and my phone number is 087 120 5603. Email is paddy@mentaleducation.ie, and you can find, like, I've got a website, mentaleducation.ie, and even that, Richie, when I was designing the website, I was kind of saying there's nobody really doing this, and I don't mean to sound, cocky or facetious. I really don't, but there's nobody really educating people about their mind and stuff like that. And the guy that was designing the website came back and said, Paddy, mentaleducation.ie is there. And I said, well, it is there because there's nobody really, at the time, there was nobody really talking about it, So, but the book, you can get the book through the website. I have to get better at promoting the book, Richie. I really do. And I don't like promoting myself, if I'm being
I'll
honest. I
get the
really don't.
links for it, Paddy, off you, and we'll attach
Yeah,
it to the bottom of this. So if there's anybody tuning in and
perfect.
watching,
Yeah,
you'll be able to find the link underneath the podcast
perfect.
there.
And I'm working at the moment, Richie, on an app, a mental education program app, and it's again, I'm just working on getting some funding for it. You wouldn't believe how hard it is to because you know yourself when you're working for yourself, and I am in a really good position that I can shape things my own way. And I was talking to a few people lately working with the HSC and working with services, and they're not able to say anything.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
Yeah.
They can't say anything. I remember when I was working with the addiction services, I couldn't say anything because I get into trouble, and because if you highlight something's not working, anyway, that's sad. But no, the mental education.ie, the app will be coming in the next couple of months, depending on funding and support and help, and I've got a Facebook page then as well, which is separate to that. Mind Matters Hypnotherapy Addiction and Counselling Service. I've recently started going on TikTok, Richie. Not, I don't know. I find it weird. I'm officially old school, I think, but I like going in and doing a couple of little videos and trying to keep things short and sharp can be difficult, but yeah, no, that's where you can get me. Yeah.
Lovely stuff. Well, Paddy, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your experience, your work, and your insights into how the mind really works, I suppose. It's been a fascinating conversation. So, before we wrap it up, thank you everybody for tuning in. Tune in to our next episode, and where we will further explore how the mind works, the mind, body, soul, and spirit. It's been a pleasure. Paddy, thank you so much for your time
Thanks,
today.
Richie.
You're an absolute gentleman. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. And please God, we'll catch up again soon.
We
Everybody,
will, I'm sure.
if nobody told you today, the Mouse Williams loves you. Remember, being really healed is not just possible, it's powerful. And that's